What's up, everybody? It's Punk Rock Talk, episode 11. Hope you all are having a great day. You're listening to the Devoticas. They are on our Spotify playlist, Rebellion Noise 2022. Follow us on Spotify if you're not already. And follow this playlist. It's updated every Monday with fresh content, always in conjunction with whoever we're going to be interviewing on Punk Rock Talk that week. Again, the name of the Spotify playlist is Rebellion Noise 2022. If you follow the playlist, you're going to get notified when it's updated, again, every Monday. We are celebrating Women's History Month all month long here on Punk Rock Talk, which means that we're going to have female guests for every episode. We've only got one more episode left. I'm going to announce who next week's guests are at the end of this episode. So make sure you stick around for that. It's a big one. You are not going to want to miss it. Last week, Punks Unite Fest was announced. Already half of the tickets are gone. It's pretty awesome. It's a really stacked lineup. But that's not the only festival taking place this year. CY Fest is coming up later this year. And my guests are going to be on that festival and the pre-show. I want to talk a little bit about that. If you've missed an episode of Punk Rock Talk, that's okay. All of the episodes are on our YouTube channel. So if you are not already subscribed to the Havoc's YouTube channel, do that. You'll get notified every time we upload a new video there. And there's always something in the works, so something new could pop up at any time over there. But every Thursday, we update our YouTube channel with these episodes. There's a lot of really interesting ones on there. So if you missed one, just go back and watch it. This episode and every episode of Punk Rock Talk is sponsored by Dead and Buried Inc. Are you in a band? Do you need merchandise? You need Dead and Buried. They are your source for all of your merchandising needs. You can find them here on Instagram. Their handle is at Dead and Buried Inc. That's INC, not INK. And you can also find them online at deadandburiedinc.com. Again, that's Dead and Buried Inc. INC, not INK. During this episode, if you have a question for the Devoticas, you can submit them by clicking that question mark icon on your screen. Please do not put your questions in the comments section. They get lost there. I never see the comments. They just fly by the screen, left and right, and I miss them. So if you have a question, make sure you click that question mark icon to submit it, and I will get to them as soon as I can. Having said that, I think it's time to get into this interview. What do you guys think? I've been really looking forward to this interview. Since the beginning of the year, the Devoticas were actually one of the hopeful guests that I connected with the first month that we started this. And I was hoping that we could lock in a date. And what better time than Women's History Month? So I'm going to go ahead and send the invite to the Devoticas. Now, we've got that invite sent, so there we go. Hi.
How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good.
I was just telling the audience how excited I am for this episode. I've been looking forward to this since our first interactions on Instagram. I think those started in January. Because the Devoticas are really legendary in the street punk scene. You guys were a part of what I refer to as kind of the golden age of street punk in the early 2000s. And I love talking about that because just being in a band myself during that period was a lot of fun. I was really bummed that our bands never got to link up and play together, but the time is now, so maybe that'll happen in the future.
Ken?
But before we get into the band, I really would love to just learn about you, Mandy, as a person. And I like asking every guest about the early days when they were kids, what kind of kid they were, where they grew up, and kind of what led them into this whole lifestyle. So if you could just inform the audience a little bit about who you are and what it was like for you growing up. What kind of kid were you?
I grew up on Long Island. I moved here when I was 8. Elaine and I became pretty close friends in the 4th grade, so we kind of grew up together. We just grew the interest together, and then we started playing instruments, I guess, when we were 14. I picked up the guitar, she picked up the bass, and it was kind of our thing. Like, we wanted to start a band, and finally when we were like 17, 18, we started the Devoticas. We found other members and just formed the band. We were definitely the weirdos in our school, but we had fun with it. We were very mischievous when we were younger, so just very silly, prankful, doing silly things at school. We always had a good time.
And so the audience knows, we were trying to set this interview up so that it would be both you and Elaine in the live stream. Unfortunately, there were some technical issues that we're having with Elaine's side, but she is going to try and join in and interact with the audience through the comments. So if you're watching right now, keep an eye on the comments section. If she's able to pop in and interact with you guys, we'd be happy to have her here. And potentially we're gonna see about setting up a separate interview with her, hopefully in the near future. But having said that, let's talk a little bit more about kind of your foundation as a musician. You said that you picked up the guitar as a teenager, but what led to that? Musical household?
Not really. My mom wasn't really too much into music. I just got into it on my own, and when I was younger, I really liked stuff like Black Sabbath and other like metal, so I got into that. And then you discover the Ramones, you discover the Misfits, and it goes from there.
Mm-hmm.
I just had an interest. I mean, I played instruments in school, like I played clarinet and the flute, and I started playing stand-up bass in my 11th grade. I played it in the band, and then I just picked up the guitar and started taking lessons.
Yeah, and that was, in the old days where if you wanted to learn how to play and you were going to take lessons, you had to go to like a mom and pop guitar shop and find a teacher. Kids today, they have it so easy. It's all available on YouTube, and you can order a guitar from Amazon and have it at home, the next day.
And it's kind of weird because I was 14 and me and my mom found an ad in like the Yankee Trader or something. And I used to just, my mom would drop me off at some guy's house and I would just sit in his house with him and play music. Where it's like now, I don't think you have that trust in people. Like you're not going to send your 14-year-old daughter to sit in someone's house by themselves.
Yeah, today that would just be seen as creepy, right? Um, so during that time, did you learn music theory or to play by ear or both?
Um, it was basically just learning scales and basic chords, and I didn't take lessons for that long. So basically, learning the power chords was enough for me, and we took it from there.
Yeah, I get that because in punk rock, like that's the foundation for
Yeah,
the guitar. It's like, no, all you need are these power chords and you'll be able to make songs that sound badass. So I totally understand that.
yeah.
But from then until now, I mean, you obviously are still playing guitar. Um, have you tried to grow as a guitarist since then, or really just kind of stayed in just the realm of punk rock?
Um, I tried a few years back when my son was younger. He was taking drum lessons, so I took guitar lessons at the same time, but I just didn't really have the time to put into it that I needed to put into it. So we're just still in the realm of punk rock.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that. Um, you mentioned your son, so and I know that you also got married fairly recently. What a wild time to get married with the pandemic going on and all that. I can't even imagine
Yeah, it was pretty.
planning and all of that. Um, was that just a huge headache? Was it postponed or like rescheduled or anything?
No, I started planning it actually during the pandemic. So I think I had like a year and a half to plan it. And, when the pandemic first happened, it was like, oh, okay, 2 weeks, and then everything's going to back normal. Like my job laid us off for 2 weeks, and we're going to go back in 2 weeks, and then 2 weeks turned into 4 months. But I was planning the wedding the whole time, so it kind of kept me busy. We lucked out because it happened right in between where it started going crazy with COVID again, and they started canceling weddings. So no one had to wear masks. We didn't have a limit on guests, and we snuck it in there. We did good.
Right on. Um, so during that time, aside from planning the wedding, what else did you do to occupy your time?
Um, I was painting a lot. I saw like nesting doll sets that I paint, so that basically occupied a lot of my time. I got custom orders and painted and sold them and had some extra money.
Yeah, it's cool. I noticed on your Instagram that you have those, and they're very unique. What got you into that?
My husband had bought me a horror set of nesting dolls, and I don't know, I was just staring at it one night, and I'm like, I think I can paint these better. And I just ordered the blank sets from like eBay or something. I found like the cheapest ones I could find, and I just started experimenting with it. And at my first I did like a Halloween set, and I did the Addams Family, and I did it, and it came out like pretty decent. And I was like, oh, okay, I can do this, and people will probably buy it, so let me try.
Was that your first attempt at painting anything?
Um, for a long time, yeah. Uh, I've always been into art and painting and drawing, but I don't practice it much. So I was kind of surprised at myself that I was able to do it because it's on like it's 3D. It's like a rounded thing and to fit the faces on there and stuff. So I was like, all right, I can do this.
Total non punk rock question, but I just got to know. Have you ever watched any of those episodes of Bob Ross?
I've seen a few episodes when I was younger.
Yeah, so I've never watched those until recently. Like, I just put it on randomly because I thought it'd be funny.
Yeah.
And I just ended up becoming totally mesmerized. And, and like, I'm a pretty like I don't know what the right term for this is. Like, if wound up is the right descriptor, there's always a lot going on in my brain. And like, I noticed within like 15 minutes of that, I had sat down on the edge of the bed and I was just so immersed into it and just completely calm. And by the time it was over, my wife looked at me and she was just like, "Are you okay?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm like real good." I don't know what that magic was that I just watched, but it did some kind of Jedi mind trick on me and I feel great.
That's awesome.
But that's kind of one of the cool things about being creative and artistic, finding different outlets to express that. And obviously, being a musician, it's so easy to just get caught up in that and kind of flexing that creative muscle. But when you find something else that you enjoy, I think it's just really therapeutic.
It is. It is because you're just focused on what you're working on. It kind of clears your head.
Absolutely. Um, so obviously, family life is important to you, but then there's also this other element of your life that the rest of us know about, the band. And I know that the band hasn't been totally inactive over the years. But where you're at right now, you guys are kind of spread throughout the world,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so for you guys to be all over the place, and to have this lineup of the band together, you've got festival performances coming up later this year. How did all of that come about for you guys, or you ladies, I should say?
Um, well, we've all kept in touch over the years. So Nacho approached Elaine. We'd wanted. It's been a couple of years that he's been in contact with Elaine, and it just was never the right time or place. And this time we were all able to do it, and and then one show turned into two shows, and we'll take it from there. Um, we haven't practiced together in a long time. We'll see how that goes, and we're trying to arrange something in the future. But if not, it's just going to be a few practices for the shows. We'll see.
Yeah,
Hopefully,
that was actually, something I was really curious about. Um, it's not totally impossible with the way technology is now to where you can still rehearse and literally not be in the same room together.
yeah.
I know it's possible. I'm not sure how it's done yet. I'm actually kind of been looking into that myself because my band, we're all spread out too. Um, but yeah, I was curious if you guys were using technology to try and make that happen or what you were planning. But yeah, like 3 practices and go just before the
Yeah.
show. That sounds like punk rock to me, and I'm all for it.
We'll see.
Well, the good thing is that, I think since the history of the band really starts with you and Elaine, and with that kind of bond, I think that just continues to carry out no matter where you're at. And when you get back in the same room together, it's like, nothing's changed really. So you definitely have that on your side.
Right.
Um, so with this festival performance coming up, and I know you guys are doing the pre-show also, what are you most looking forward to aside from playing?
Aside from playing, for all of us girls to be together in one room, it's been 20 years since we've been all together. I've seen them separately, but I just think it would be cool to even just the practice sessions and getting to catch up all together and see. feed our kids, and you know, we're all bringing our kids, I believe. So,
What was the last interaction you guys had in the same room? Was it the end of a show or a rehearsal or?
um, yeah, we had when it was Holidays in the Sun in Asbury Park. Uh, the night before we played a show, and that was the last time we were all together. We didn't wind up really playing Asbury Park, so yeah, it was the night before.
I'm sorry, I missed that because the audio cut out. Did you say you guys did not end up playing?
No, we attempted, but JJ wasn't able to make it, and Elaine, Gabrielle, and I were there, and we tried to have other people sing, and it was a giant embarrassing mess.
Oh, yeah. I couldn't imagine because I remember back in the day hearing about that festival and just thinking like, that'd be so fucking cool to play that. Um, I think the first one was in '99, wasn't it?
In New York, I mean, well, in the US, well, Hits was always in England, and then
Right.
in New Jersey. I don't know if there was others here. I just know of that one.
So let's talk about maybe your favorite memory from this lineup of the band. Was there a show that you were just like, that was so fucking cool? Or maybe a tour that you have really fond memories of?
Um, well, the tour that we did with JJ was, I think the whole thing was fun. We had such a good dynamic together, so we were able to just enjoy ourselves. I mean, probably one of my favorite memories is we played in Switzerland and we went to Gruyere and we where the Museum is, and it was this little town basically in a castle. So it was a big castle and it encompassed this whole little town, and we went and had dinner and we went to the museum, and at the end of our visit to the museum, he was there. So we got to meet Giger and take some pictures with him, and we had him signing like books and stuff. And at the end of it, he was like, "Oh, can I have a CD?" And we gave him a CD of the band, and he had us sign it for him, and we were like, "What?"
That's awesome.
Yeah, I think that's one of my favorite memories. I mean, we
Did,
many cool places, and when you play in Europe, just the experience is amazing. You just have people who either the venue's upstairs from the where you stay is upstairs from the venue, or you have just awesome people taking you into their home and taking care of you and making you breakfast, and it's just I wouldn't trade that for the world. Like having those experiences and all the people we met, and it's amazing that you can be in a band and it can change your life. And I wouldn't have gone to Europe, I don't think, ever without the band. Having that opportunity was amazing.
yeah, I tell people all the time that one of the things that I have valued the most in my life is the opportunity to travel, and not just to travel and play music, although that's my, I love being able to do that. But traveling as a whole just broadens your horizons so much. And for me, I just found a deeper appreciation for where I come from and also where I'm not from.
Right.
Um, is that something that you miss, is being able to travel with the band, or do you still travel a lot in your personal life?
No, I don't travel that often. I do miss that, but I don't think it's something that would be as easy to do now that I'm older. You know, everyone has jobs and responsibilities and kids and husbands and houses, so it wouldn't be as easy to just pick up and go on a 5 week tour.
Right. Yeah, and like I also don't think it's really necessary anymore. Um, and I say that because of what we're utilizing right now.
Right.
we have this technology available to us with social media and the internet, and we can connect with the fan base through this medium and still maintain their interest while we release new music and play whenever we can. It doesn't have to be 5 weeks of, you know, in a shitty van and hating each other because somebody never shuts the fuck up, or, you know, whatever thing that bothers you about your bandmates. You don't have to deal with that all the time.
Right.
Um, what do you think about where we're at now in society with social media and how that has impacted the music scene?
Um, I think it's amazing because there's so many people that are connected through social media that you probably would have never met if it didn't exist. But I also feel like social media takes away a lot from the music because it's just, you know, it's a screen that you're looking at where I don't know, I know around here there's the scene isn't the same. So there's not as many people, there's not as many young kids. And I think because young kids are so engulfed in their Instagram and their Snapchat, and they don't need to go out and interact. Like they don't, and they're, I don't know. I just feel like there's not the same kind of outlet where you came together with people and made connections and it was in person, and it takes away from that. But on the other hand, you get to interact with people all over the world that, you know, it's like a catch 22, I think.
Absolutely. I'm sure a lot of people would love to hear about the old days and the scene that you came up in. Um, I feel like the New York City punk rock scene is kind of synonymous with the whole street punk movement. A lot of that has to do with the Casualties, of course. And just a lot of the uh, early street punk bands were from the East Coast. Um, what was it like back then going to shows and in the city, and what was the energy like at that time?
It was pretty amazing. I remember Elaine and I would cut school, and it could be a Tuesday afternoon. We'd cut school and be like, hey, let's go to the city. And you would just walk down St. Mark's Place and run into 20, 30 people that you knew and you can go hang out with. And we'd walk to the park and just hang out. And, you know, these are all people that we met going to these shows. I don't know. I also remember us, like, there would be shows on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And we'd be like, all right, we have this amount of money, so we can go to the city twice this weekend. Which shows are we going to? And like having to like pick out of all awesome shows to go to, which ones we wanted to go to more, or just staying in the city overnight, just staying awake, walking around so that we could see both shows. But there'd be a show at CB's, and then at the same time there was a show at Coney, like trying to decide like which one is the one you really wanted to go to. It was shows were in abundance and venues were in abundance and people were in abundance. Like it was a really good time. I'm definitely glad that we grew up in that time period, especially for this music scene.
Yeah, I can't imagine what it was like. I've been to New York City a handful of times, um, and it's nuts. Uh, but even back then, like, um, just to see like old photos from back then, um, and some like video footage, it just seems like it was fucking nuts all the time. I can't imagine what it was like for you, not just going to shows back then, but what was it like when you started playing shows there? What was the first show? How did all that come together?
Our first show was actually on Long Island. It was at a little bar that's on a college campus. Um, which Long Island had its own, it was almost separate from New York scene, where some people went to both shows, some people only went to Long Island shows. And it was just a different crowd of people, a different dynamic. Remember which show was our first city show? I have no recollection of it. I just remember the one on Long Island at the spot.
So it didn't take too long for you guys after you started playing shows to get noticed by punkcore, right?
Right. Yeah.
How did all that come about?
I think Elaine knew Dave at that point. So it was her friendship and connection with Dave, and he offered, like, he heard our song on Punks Unite, and he was really into it. And or it might have been right before it was released, like when we recorded it. She might have played it for him, and he was really into it, and he just offered to put it out. And we recorded. That was that. That was punkcore.
um, Talking about recording, it's again a totally different animal now compared to back then. The technology has advanced so much to where you can have your own studio set up in your bedroom if you want. But back then, you know, you had to hire an engineer and go to a studio and do the whole fucking thing. What was it like for you with your first experiences recording? Was it just, I know my first time recording, I was like, holy shit, this takes forever. Like,
I remember I would just keep getting really nervous, and I kept fucking up and having to start the songs over and over again and feeling really annoying. I was like, I'm really annoying because I suck.
you know, I don't think that that's the case. I don't think that you actually suck or did actually suck. There's something about when you press the record button, this little switch goes off in your brain because you know that you're being recorded.
Yeah.
And like for some reason, you start to just lose all of your cognitive ability. And you're like, what the fuck is wrong with me right now? I've played this 1,000 times.
Yeah. Or it just be like one small part that you couldn't get right, no matter how many times you tried. I remember Tom, the guy who recorded us, was like, all right, so I'm just going to cut you in right here. And I'm like, all right, I got this. And like 20 times later, I'm like, I don't have it.
Yeah, you know, one of the most embarrassing moments in my career as a musician was when we were recording our full length, and it was our first time recording with that drummer. And I don't remember what the issue was, but one of the songs, like we played it, it had to have been 50 times, the same part over and over and over, because something, I think it was some drum fill wasn't just getting nailed or whatever. And finally the engineer stopped us and said, guys, we're getting nowhere slow. I think it's time to call it for the day. And I was just like, I'm a fucking failure. I hate this shit. So yeah, the frustration with all that, but I think that's just part of being young and learning all of the ins and outs with the studio, you know, being 20 years old and trying to record a full length for the first time, you know, and plus there's kind of the added pressure of like, people know who we are and they're kind of expecting something decent. But from the first record to the second record, did you find it to be simpler recording that time?
No. Into the album, then I found it easy. I was just always nervous. I don't know. Even playing shows, I was always super nervous. And I would just like, I would drop the pick. I would forget the songs in the middle of the song. I was always super nervous. Um, and I think by the time, we recorded the album and we went on tour with JJ, I think also we had a better band dynamic. So we all felt more comfortable with each other. We were starting to write better music. And I just stopped worrying about it after a while because it only made things worse.
Yeah, I've had some of those experiences too, like um, playing for like a larger audience for the first time, and you just are like, shit, that's way more people than I was expecting.
Well, I think CY Fest is probably going to be the biggest audience that Devoticas have played in front of ever. Like we played hits, but there was so many bands playing at the same time that everybody was spread out. This is going to be the most people we've ever played in front of. That's a little nerve wracking.
I was going to ask, are you nervous about it now?
I think if we get a few practices in, right?
Yeah. Um, I'm going to pull up some of the audience questions and see what they have submitted. And I'm going to tap on it and it'll show up on your screen so we can both read it.
Okay.
Okay, this comes from a longtime friend, Sid Kid. He says, can she speak a bit about the other band she's in called Bitch Switch?
Yeah, that's my current band that I'm in now. It's all girls. We started over the pandemic. We have a demo that we just released. Um, we're still in the beginning stage. I think we have 6 songs. We played a couple shows. Um, it's actually didn't really know any of the members. A friend of mine's girlfriend wanted to start a band, so I got in contact with her and we just recruited some girls and started a band.
Is it also punk rock or does it have some other vibe?
I guess it's more like hardcore slash punk. It's a different sounding than the Devochkas.
Nice. Um, okay, let's see about Discog Safety Your Baby. Was anyone more punk than Johnny Treason? Cheers, Fat Dave.
Oh, what's up, Dave? No, absolutely no one. That's my adopted son he's talking about. I adopted when I was young.
Fat Dave, obviously from the virus. It'd be awesome to interview him sometime. I've actually never even met him.
Fat Dave's amazing.
Okay, let's see here. This is a great question. This comes from my friend Bill Johnston of 40 Ounce Booking Atlanta. He says, have you noticed a difference in the progression of women's equality in the punk cult versus the rest of society in general? And what was the difference?
Well, I've noticed actually from being in a newer band that it's a lot more respectful now. Um, I don't know about the rest of society, but I've seen in small cases, it seems there's a lot more respect for women and women as musicians where you don't get on stage and get the show us your tits, you know, being heckled. I think, I guess in general, from the 90s until now, I guess in all of society, it is improving slightly. I feel like things just shift in a way. I don't know how to describe what I'm thinking, but yeah, it seems there's definitely more women musicians now than a lot of bands, even if it's not all girls, it's a girl drummer, a girl guitarist. Like it's it's cool. It's cool to see that it's not like a constraint anymore where someone's going to be scared to get up there or, scared of being heckled. Because dealing with that was rough sometimes, like you're already nervous and then you're getting heckled throughout your set and it's like, dude, I just want to play the song we wrote, like that's all we're doing up here. We can create music just like you can create music, but it's definitely gotten a lot better from what I've seen and experienced.
Yeah, I was talking about something similar last week with Renee Blanks. Um, Not just the punk scene, but the music scene in general is just so male dominated. And I can't imagine that intimidation, um, being a woman and getting up in front of a bunch of dudes to play and then dealing with shit like that. I'm glad that we're at a place now in society where that kind of behavior would, be looked down on. Like, hey, man, don't be a fucking asshole. What is your deal?
Yeah.
I'm going to continue on with some of these audience questions because they've been really good. Okay, Super Beanie says, are you ladies going to make a new album?
We've spoken about writing some new songs. It's just the fact that we're all over the world, as you said. It's kind of hard to really try and plan that. I know JJ and I are going to try and get together some point soon and see what we can put together and how we can put it together. If we can do it from separate places in the world or if we're going to try and like get together and do it. But we have to see what life brings us and how it's going to work.
Well, I know that was one of the questions that first popped into my head as soon as I saw the announcement that you guys were going to play CY Fest. I was like, holy shit. I hope these ladies are going to be putting out new music too. But I think, you don't have to put out a full-length album anymore either to be relevant.
Yeah, I would like to at least have a song or two new songs to play at CY. I think that would be cool. Um, if we can work it out, we will definitely start writing songs.
Very cool. Let's see. There's some more here too. Actually, no. That was the end of those. But if you do have a question, you can submit it by clicking that question mark icon on your screen. Please don't put it in the comments section. It gets lost there. I'll never see it. You talked about a couple things while answering some of those questions that I wanted to touch on. First of all, being a woman in the punk scene, being a musician, a female musician, were there other females in bands prior to your time that you really admired and thought, I want to do that?
I actually worked with a girl when I was younger. Her name was Debbie. She was in a band called Summer's Eve, and I met her at work and we were talking, whatever. And she's like, "Oh, this is my band's 7 inch or whatever," and we listened to it at work. And I was looking at the insert and everything, and I was like, "Oh, cool." She was in a band, and they were all girls, so that was definitely cool for like a personal inspiration.
have you ever tried being in a band with guys?
Hmm.
What was
I
that?
it's definitely a different kind of dynamic, but my husband, before he was my husband, we still have a band. We have a band. Um, but we did a couple bands together. That was what broke me out of my hiatus of playing guitar. And we had a band called Coffin Fit, and then we're in a band called Young Duckers currently. Um, it's definitely a different dynamic. It's still fun. I think being in a band with all girls is just, it's special. Like there's just something special about it, and there's a different like comfortability with it.
Yeah, I've never been in a band uh, with a female, but I don't know what that what the dynamic would be like because I've always just been in a band with other dudes.
It's
Um,
me basically laughing at everything they say because they're just
I don't know. I feel like when you're around the same sex, you kind of let your guard down on a lot of things, and you like I know for guys like we just get super crude about shit, um, which is fun, but there's a time and a place, obviously, um, and like being in a band with somebody, and especially touring, like I don't know about what that would be like touring with someone of the opposite sex, just because you know there's so many variables that you're just not used to.
I've done like small like a week long we've gone on like mini tours or whatever. It's it's pretty much the same. Like you're just in different cities and meeting different people and just the scenarios are the same. Um, I guess you get less like gross guys trying to you, but um, yeah, I don't see it as much different. I mean, like I said, being in a band with all girls is like just it's something special about that because it's like a rarity, unfortunately. Um, but I don't know, like touring and stuff, just like other than creepy guys trying to approach you, I would say is the same.
You said something earlier too about you think that there's more female musicians now, which I would agree. I think that there's just more musicians in general now. Um, you know, when I was a kid and wanting to start a band and all like that, um, I had to buy my first guitar from a mom and pop shop. There wasn't a fucking Guitar Center, or Amazon where you could purchase one and have it delivered. Um, Also, like we talked about earlier with YouTube, that wasn't around, so I couldn't learn to play for free. Um, but I think that there is like this huge convenience factor now. It's way more accessible to become a musician if you're just the slightest bit curious.
Right.
Um, which I think is cool, but also kind of a double-edged sword in a way because there's just so many artists now. It seems like it's hard to stand out.
Yeah, I can see that. I think it also though it like pans out because the people who are writing and creating music that are into it for the right reasons are going to continue. People who are just like, oh, I can do this, like they kind of just weed themselves out, and people lose their focus on them. So it kind of evens out.
Yeah, we've seen like such uh, a drastic change with how music is consumed now. Also, back in the day, you know, when I was growing up, it was cassettes and then CDs. Um, and then I remember like the first time iPods were coming out, and I was like, this is fucking cool, but weird.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I'm used to carrying around like 8 CD albums, you know, that you have to flip through all the pages to, and then there's that one that you can never find. You're like, where the fuck is it?
Yeah. I'm hearing about iPods. Like I had it was probably, I think it was the phone that was it called like the Razor? It was like that really flat phone, and you can get it in different colors. And I had one of those. I worked at a tattoo shop, and I just remember the guy like, oh, I just read this article, like soon your phone's gonna hold your music, and it's gonna be like a computer, and I guess it was some like ad for Apple, and I was like, what? No way. And then probably a few months later, a guest tattoo artist came in from California, and he had an iPod. And I was like, what is this? And he's like, yeah, flip through it, and had that like little wheel that you still like the
Yeah.
click. And I was like clicking through it, looking through bands, and I was like, no, I don't, and you can pick out something. Like I was just so weirded out by it because I'm like, how is this thing have music on it?
Yeah, and then they came out with like the iPod Mini,
Yeah.
which is like the size of a Fire Stick remote.
Yeah.
I remember like we'd have like at work, we'd have the iPod hooked up to the stereo, and like we're blasting it all loud. But then when that record finishes and you're going to go look for something else, and you're scrolling with the wheel and that click noise coming through the speaker,
Yeah.
it's so fucking annoying. But now with streaming, it's like everything is literally at our fingertips, with all of the streaming platforms, which I think is rad. Like, I think the accessibility is totally rad, but I hate how artists are just being totally underpaid.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just the way of the world. Like everything is just so easily accessible, and you can download a song at a time and pay $1, and or whatever it is now. I haven't downloaded a song and paid for it in forever, but like it's how do you split that up? Because you have the company that's doing it, the people, it's just it's not the same. Like it's not the same as bringing home a record and listening to it. And while you're listening to it, you're opening the insert, you're reading the lyrics, you're looking at the pictures. It doesn't have that feel to it. Like you can just okay, so you have Spotify or Apple Music or whatever. You just download something and it's in your library, and you don't necessarily even listen to it right when you download it. You just download it for later. Whereas going out and buying records, you're going to a store and you're physically picking up a copy, paying for it, bringing it home, putting it on the record player, and having the sleeve and the insert just in your hands to look at and read. Like I feel like it took away for me it took away a lot of that. Like that was my favorite thing to do. Just throw it on, lay down on my bed, and like read all the lyrics and look at all the pictures.
Yeah, I had a similar conversation with Mike Virus about this when I interviewed him, um, talking about the ritual of not just listening to new music, but going on the adventure to discover it.
Right.
The whole thing of going to the record store and flipping through the vinyls and then finding one where you thought the cover looked so fucking cool, and you're like, I want to know what this sounds like just based on what it looks like.
Right.
And one of my favorite things is not just opening up a record for the first time, but there's something about the smell.
Yeah.
The smell of not just like the vinyl, but the actual insert and the cardboard. It has a very distinct smell. And every time I listen to vinyl, that smell like just goes off in my brain.
Yeah.
Um, what was a record for you that the first time that you laid eyes on it, you were just like that moment I just described of, holy shit, I can't wait to listen to this. I'm going to buy this and take it home right now because I can't wait to listen to it.
Um, Actually, it was two records of like I went to a record store and on a whim I saw a band called Cyanide and a band called Extroverts, and I was just flipping through the records. Oh, these look cool, and I didn't see anything else that stood out to me or anything I was specifically looking for. I'm like, I guess I'll just take these two things, and they were represses. And I went home and listened to them. I was so excited because I'm like, I've never heard of these bands before, and I put them on, and I still to this day really like those bands. As
That's
like as far as like music I've never heard before, and just seeing a record and being like, yeah, that looks cool, and bringing it home. I was at like finding like going to a record convention and finding a record that you've been looking to for years. Like I remember looking for Dead Wretched, No Hope for Anyone forever. And then finally finding it at a record convention and being like, I'm gonna take you home and listen to you. Being super excited about it.
yeah. I have all of the records that I bought as a teenager. Somehow I've managed to hang on to all of them through countless moves and whatever. But I am convinced that something about that whole ritual process, especially when you're young, as a teenager, you're just so much more impressionable. But something about the process of going through that whole ritual and being able to hold the record in your hands and then listening to it for the first time and discovering song by song how badass that band is. Um, I think that just leaves this lasting impact that digital music never will.
Right.
I think that's just so disappointing, for young listeners that I mean, it's not impossible to have that experience, right? I mean, there are still some record stores left and there are bands still putting out vinyl. Um, but it's not like it was back in the day where record stores were plentiful.
Right.
Um, you mentioned that you have a son. How old is he and what is his journey like for discovering new music, or is he not old enough for that?
No, he's 18.
Okay.
He listens to, I think it's like that thing where whatever your parents listen to is not what you're going to listen to. So he listens to like garbage music, terrible music. I can't even, he'll try and play me songs sometimes, and I'm like, at 30 seconds in, I'm like, I can't. You have to shut this off. It's making me. I think just watching him grow up and the whole dynamic of social media and how they get into music, and it's a completely different animal. They like I feel like an old lady when it comes to technology because I don't know how to do it. But since he's like 6 years old, I'd be like, "Hey, Philip, how do I do this?" And he'd take my phone and like do whatever I needed to do. Like they've just grown up in this electronic era, and I think it forms different types of personalities too. Like I don't know, he's not he's not specifically into anything, but I think it's because you have access to everything and it's so easy.
Yeah.
Like even discovering new music, like what you can put in a band and then on Spotify or iTunes or whatever, and it's just going to play a playlist with similar music. Like when we were younger, it was awesome when you found an old compilation and you were like, oh, cool, there's a comp with bands on it I've never heard. And then the hunt for those individual bands because you listen to them on a compilation. Now it's just everything's easy access. Any question you want answered, you can get it answered in like 30 seconds.
Easy access and instant gratification,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is horrible.
Yeah. Yeah.
We are starting to run out of time. There are some audience questions that have been submitted, so I'm going to check that and see if we can take care of those before we end this. Okay. Punkcore Catalog says, what female musicians inspired the band?
I remember hearing the Violators for the first time. The Violators, Expelled, Vice Squad, X-Ray Specs, Becky Bondage herself. Like, just, I mean, look at her now. She's still fucking kicking it. She's rocking. Like, she's amazing in person. Yeah, I mean, it started with all that. I know one of Elaine's biggest influences was Susie Quattro, which made her want to pick up the bass again. Um, I don't know, there's Susie, Susie and the Banshees, Penetration. There's so many.
A lot of these bands are the artists that you submitted for the Spotify playlist.
Right.
I love that we have this playlist because it gets updated every week with, you know, whoever we're going to interview. And it's a great way to discover different artists that maybe you haven't heard of before. I've discovered a lot of young bands through doing this that I'm excited about. And some of those bands I have started to see their name pop up on some festival appearances. So it's pretty cool that, you know, it's like having a digital compilation, and it's cool that we're able to do that these days.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Let's look at some of these other questions. Murder Music Connect says, what are your favorite newer bands right now?
I like Bishop's Green a lot. Who Killed Spiky Jacket? And then there's, you know, local bands in the scene. Like my husband's in a really awesome band called Powerlize. Um, I can't think of any more off the top of my head.
How about any current bands that are more mainstream? Do you ever find yourself listening to something mainstream that you're like, wow, I actually really enjoy this?
To be honest, no, I don't like the radio ever. Um, I just have my Apple Music or whatever that just goes on shuffle on my phone.
Well, I want to thank you for taking time out of your day to be a part of this. Um, I know that you've got a busy life, but I'm excited to see what the Devoticas are going to be doing in the near future. I'm sure everyone that has been tuning into this episode feels the same way. Before I let you go, is there anything that you want to plug or anyone you want to shout out?
Um, no, I'm excited for California and I hope to see a lot of people there, and it'll be nice to meet a lot of people that I've been talking to on the computer for a really long time and meet Nacho finally. We've been talking to him for a few years, so looking forward to that. And also people we haven't seen in a long time, like bands that we haven't played with in years. So that should be good. And I give a shout out to my band members for being awesome.
Speaking of the band, is there any place where people can find more of the Devochkas online? And obviously, you have an Instagram. What about other social media, or is there merchandise available anywhere? Anything like that?
We have a Facebook page, and we do have shirts from when we played Sweden a few years ago. Elaine has them, but the problem is that shipping is so expensive right now. So unless you want to pay a shit ton of money in shipping, it's, I don't know. Hopefully, Elaine will be in the States at some point, so that'll be easier to ship those out without them being super expensive. But we're we have merchandise, so once we have that available, we will announce it on our pages.
Great. Well, again, thank you so much for joining me on here, and hopefully we can get something else set up with Elaine in the near future. I'm sure that people would love to hear her perspective about things. But until the next time, whether I see you here in the digital world or hopefully in person, I'd love to come catch you guys play sometime. You take care, and we'll see you soon.
All right, thanks for having me.
You're welcome.
Bye.
All right, everyone. Make sure you tune in next week when my guests will be Tony and Michelle Casalio, the promoters of Punks Unite Fest. Tony is also in The Wheels. They have a Oddities and Curiosities Expo that travels all over the country. An amazing record store in Tulsa, Oklahoma called Boulevard Trash. They are very active and integral members of this scene. I have nothing but respect for Tony, and I cannot wait to have both of them on here to talk about Punks Unite Fest and everything else that they have in the works. You don't want to miss it. So make sure that you tune in here next week. Punk Rock Talk is 2:30 Pacific Time, 4:30 Central, 5:30 Eastern, and live here on Instagram. To play us out, it's the Devoticas. See you next time, guys. It's all about